Well, thank you all for joining us. This is our monthly webinar. You are joining the 7 tips for piecing together dementia care. We are excited to have you. I know that I personally had challenges with my grandmother and my father. Even though I'm in the industry, been in it for a long time, it is still, when it happens to you and you're going through it with your own family, it can be very challenging. There's just so many facets, so many avenues to go, and lots of information to review and where to go. So we're excited that you're here today. My name is Paige Fairbanks-Gunn. I work for Koelsch Senior Communities. We have memory care communities throughout 8 different states. I'm actually in a memory care community today. I was visiting with families and residents, so I'm excited to be here. I've been in the industry since 1997, and of course, I've had lots of worked with many, many families, and then had personal experiences. So we're so glad that you're here today. And please put your chat question, put some information, questions, comments in the chat. We are very open. This is very informal. We want to help you. We're here to help and be a resource for you. So, and then I have my co-host.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Pam Ostrowski with Alzheimer's Family Consulting. I'm the author of It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey. And, my story with piecing together dementia had to do with me knowing that mom needed help, but dad not wanting to do it. So he was resistant. He wanted to hold on to their condo for as long as possible and not pay for care. Paige, you and I talk about, the financial side of this quite frequently. Long-term care insurance people do, financial advisors do, about how much does this stuff cost, and my parents wanted to age in place at home, but dad didn't want to allow a caregiver in. And I'm like, well, how's that going to work? So again, these puzzle pieces of all the different aspects of caring for someone with dementia, they don't always line up depending on the personalities, right? Have you seen that too, Paige?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely, it's a case by case situation. And what that puzzle piece, what that puzzle is going to look like is definitely different for everybody.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get started with some questions that we get from caregivers frequently about where do I start and how do I know when is the right time to start a caregiver in my house, or what's a senior activity center do? We're going to go through all of this, and I'm sure you're going to have questions, so be sure to put them in the chat. So our first caregiver question is, how do I know if I'm going to be a good care provider for my loved one with dementia? So what do you think, Paige? What are some ways to find that out?
Well, how do I know if I'm going to be a good care provider is you have to look at your care options first and foremost. Aside from doing your own, your best at what you think you can do. I mean, this is a challenge, everybody. People think they know how to do this, and it's complicated. It really is.
It's not that simple.
It really is not that simple. It really is. It is not that simple. It isn't. And you really have to do your research, reaching out to your friends that have had, care, their parents have had care, trusting in people, but you need to start sooner is smarter, because as we age, we're not getting any younger. So that just opens us up to, as we age, things are going to become more complicated. Unfortunately, things can be. We're not safe in the home anymore, potentially. We're going to need assistance. What does that look like? Are we asking our family members to take on the torch to help us? Or are we looking at band-aiding services or hybriding services and getting professional help? So what does that look like?
We'll be talking about that though, right? We're not
yes, exactly. So there's in-home care. That's a first.
We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to make sure that we answer this question thoroughly. Because then we'll get on to, because that's the next question really is what are the options? So what I would say, my dad thought he was the best caregiver. So show of hands or little
Thumbs
yes
up.
in the chat of how many people think they are the best caregiver for their loved one with dementia. So put that in the chat. And guess what? If you said no, odds are you are in the minority. My dad thought he was the best caregiver and my mom was doing fine. Here's the problem. In maybe a medical situation, this would be different. But this is not a one person role. You must have multiple skills. And you are, remember, first and foremost, either a spouse or an adult child of this individual. And as their cognitive impairment increases, they still see you as that. They don't see you as the person who gives them medication. They don't see you as the person who fixes them meals. What that does is that can create a lot of frustration for them. So as much as you would like to be the caregiver, they don't think of you that way, and you're going to get resistance. Spouses do not tell their spouse what to do. That was my dad's problem with medication management, which, by the way, she did fine with the professional caregiver at the care community. She didn't have any issues with the woman coming in and saying, well, here are your medications, here's your water, take those, and she took them fine. But if my dad told her what to do, all bets were off. She wouldn't do it. So you need nursing skills. You need to know how to administer their medications. You need creative speaking skills. So if they don't put their shoes on or they're not going to take a shower, what are the 5 other ways that you can persuade them to take a shower? Do you know those? Are they going to listen anyway because of your role in their lives? You need loads of patience. And when somebody asks you the same question 15 times in 15 minutes, you're going to kind of be ready to, leave the room. And that's exactly what you should do, by the way. And it really comes down to appreciating the fact that this is a complicated disease. It requires a wide variety of skill sets and a lot of things that you have not been trained on. And so, especially around on Paige, I know Koelsch is very focused on this, is stimulation. That doesn't mean socialization where I'm chit-chatting with somebody. It means doing things that stimulate the brain, whether that's listening to music or, painting a birdhouse or whatever it might be. So those are the things that I use as criteria for a good care provider, is that they have all of these skills together. And guess what? There isn't just one person on the planet who can do all of that. So if you're trying to fill all of those shoes, odds are you're exhausted, overwhelmed, frustrated, crying a lot, not getting any sleep, and just ready to throw up your hands. So we're going to talk about what the options are for getting care. And then after that, we'll connect those with the symptoms that your loved one might be having. So Paige, let's talk about that. What are the care options, aside from them trying to do their best?
So first good step is really if you're looking for some part-time care, a good option would be, home care option, or like your
in-home health,
day club,
right?
In-home health.
Yeah.
Your in-home health can be anywhere from, it's usually the minimum is usually anywhere from usually minimum 4 hours. Some will do 2 a day. But then that's bringing somebody in. And I suggest through an agency, if you find somebody from a church or a family friend that maybe has been a caregiver, that's fine. But I would always recommend potentially an agency, just because they do the background checks and so forth, drug testing, etc. But home care is a good option. It is. Another option would be, day stay. There's adult day clubs out there that can provide hourly care. Those are 2 good, first steps that you could look at for options.
Right. Well, and the other thing about in-home health, so just so you guys know, in-home health is typically at the lowest level and least expensive one is your companion. So if your
Yes.
loved one tends to wander or just need someone to keep them busy so that you can go work in your office or you can go get groceries or whatever, that person isn't there to do much of anything except the stimulation side of things, which is so important to mitigating the progression of dementia. The more somebody sits in front of the TV, the more that someone just kind of stares out into space, the faster the disease can progress. So
Mhm.
we want a companion to start off with. The next thing is to, now that you've got training involved, so you typically have a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, someone who knows some ways to, do the medication management, but also ways to persuade the loved one to take the medication, to take a shower, to brush their teeth. So they're going to be able to help with that. And then with dementia care, that person knows how to redirect a person who's hell-bent on getting out the door or who is struggling with doing something but not taking over the task, which is what we would do as caregivers, as family members. It'd be like, here, let me do that for you. Whereas a dementia trained caregiver, which is a question you need to ask of any in-home health agency, is are your caregivers dementia trained, and
Dementia
what dementia
trained.
training did they go through? Teepa Snow has a great program for that. And so positive approach for care, positive approach to care, that's what it is. Gotta get my
Yes.
prepositions right. And so you want that person who can help your loved one be successful in what they can do. And so that's really important to note with in-home health. Now, home health is actually medical health. That's when a nurse comes and there's medical issues. So thanks for that, Paige. And so there's that. And then for senior activities, senior activity centers or day stays, this is where they're going to get more stimulation and you don't have to do it. You don't have to figure out what are we going to do today to keep us stimulated. And so but the key here is this is not a drop them off at the door and hope for the best. This is very independent on, or very dependent on the individual symptoms and where they are in this journey. So you should always go with them the first time. So, you want to make sure that at least the first time, maybe a couple of times, see how they integrate. It's going to take them a while. It's a foreign environment. The further down the road they are, the less likely you can use a senior activity center, honestly. If somebody has mild cognitive impairment or their early stages, that's probably okay. So that those two are helpful for those earliest stages. Paige, can you talk a bit about like respite stays at memory care communities? How does that work?
Yes. So all of our Koelsch communities, many communities do it. Some don't, but some do it. But the minimum is usually about 2 weeks. But what a respite stay is it's a short-term stay, is what that means. Anything under 30 days. So if you're looking at a short-term respite stays are really they're very, very beneficial for you if you are just basically you are at your, you have run out of battery. You are stressed out as a caregiver, whether you're a spouse caregiver or an adult child. And you are looking for just to get you're looking for some rest and relaxation so you can recharge your battery to be able to, step into that full-time caregiving role again. So respite stay is very beneficial. It is a full overnight stay. Someone stays in our Koelsch communities, it's a minimum of 2 weeks, and they come in for 2 weeks. Of course, we do the assessment. We know what the care plan is going to be, and we come up with a strategic plan for them for 2 weeks while you can go get rest, go do what you need to do, and be able to recharge your battery so you can build up the strength to continue caregiving full time. So it's very beneficial. Respite stays, I'm always telling families in the support group that I'm in, really, you have to have a respite stay as a backup plan ready to go. Because when something happens, what if the caregiver, falls down and breaks a hip? or you get really sick and you have no one else to care for your loved one. You need to be able to have that plan B in place so you can call the community you've selected, say, I'm ready for a respite stay. I need to do it like tomorrow or yesterday.
Right.
Then that way they're ready to go, you're ready, and you can make it a smooth transition. So respite stays are very beneficial.
Well, and they're honestly, in my opinion, having gone through this for 14 years, they're a requirement because you're going to do this from the time the person is diagnosed for 4 to 8 years. So you think about the day to day and how many days that is and how many months that is, and being able to know that your loved one is safe, they're cleaned, they're well fed, they're getting stimulation, all the things that are exhausting you are being taken care of by a team of people supporting you. So that's something that you need. And one of the tips that I have that I've given to several people here on this call is when you do the respite stay. So I actually encourage people to do it for 4 weeks. And the reason is, one, the first 2 weeks you need to catch up on your sleep and recover. Then the second 2 weeks you can actually kind of rejuvenate and get in touch with friends and kind of reclaim your life. Then the next thing is during that first 2 weeks, and Paige, you tell me what your perspective is on this, but a lot of times we say, at least for the first week, let your loved one integrate. Just like you're having to integrate back to not having them in the house, you have to let them integrate with the care staff. If you're on them like a helicopter spouse or a helicopter adult child, they're never going to integrate. They're going to depend on you and see you and be like, well, I don't know who these people are. There's my person. But if they're by themselves, they realize, oh, these people are helping me. They're showing me how to do things. They're feeding me. They're giving me treats. All of those things, you have to let them do that. And I would say that the number one issue my clients have is doing that because they were so used to taking care of this person that when they're not in your house anymore, it's like, well, what am I going to do? I need to take care of them. I should call. I'm going to go check on them. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's not the way this works. Dementia is a special mental, cognitive impairment that requires you to do this. Paige, what are your insights on like length of time for a respite? If
respite, I highly recommend 30 days because it's 30 days or less.
I'm sorry. I
for
meant
families.
For families not to visit.
Oh, absolutely. So each individual is a little bit different. And you mentioned helicopter caregivers. There are many out there. And it's very rightfully so. You're with them 24/7. So it really is a matter of educating and really supporting and explaining to the families that this is a way for you to really unplug, let the professionals take over your loved one. I know it can be very, it might cause a lot of anxiety for you, but we are here. We've done this so many times with so many families. We want you to be able to unplug so you can get the mental health that you need and your strength to be able to step back into this seat full time. So we recommend that. Sometimes it depends. Like I said, everybody's a little bit different and every plan's a little bit different. Most of the time we recommend if they're coming in for 30 days, we recommend that they do one visit a week if they are going to visit. Some of them we recommend they don't visit at all.
Yeah, it just depends on the situation.
It just depends on the situation.
Yeah, yes. The codependent relationship, because it will do you no good to visit every day. It will do you no good to visit every other day. And
we explain to families too that, listen, you can contact the community, ask for the head nurse on the floor, and you can get a full report right there.
Right.
And we're going to be texting, pictures of your loved one and engagement and activities and having meals and, doing things throughout the day. So we can basically kind of give you, we can give a
peace of mind. It really
Absolutely.
is peace of mind to have that communication without you actually showing up. So let's skip to what people say use the term incorrectly, which is skill. They talk about nursing homes. And what the nursing home really is a skilled nursing facility. You may see it abbreviated SNF, or in the industry, we call it a SNF. So with SNFs, that is 24/7 nursing care. That is not what memory care communities, assisted living, or independent living are. They are more of a docked luxury cruise liner that's focused on all aspects of living and helping people do that to the best of their ability. So skilled nursing is, Paige, give me some examples of what medical issues would warrant going to a skilled nursing facility.
Oh yeah, so skilled nursing, the old term, the old nursing home, that's kind of that term. It just to kind of let you know before I jump into some of the symptoms that were require that is most people don't have to go to a nursing home ever anymore unless they're going there for rehab or they're going there for some specific skilled need. And what that skilled need would be is they need a clinician that would be they have a severe wound. Maybe they have a wound vac going on. They have feeding tubes. There's a ventilator going on, IVs, very clinically, a big clinical setting to be able to, help this resident recover, or they're in, recovery mode. It's not for people that are living there long term. It can be an option, but most people can live their days out in assisted living. That's really
or memory care, since we're talking
memory
about
care. Yeah, so memory care or assisted living.
To me, the worst environment for someone with dementia is a skilled nursing facility because they
don't know.
They're not equipped. One, they're not trained. So most nurses do not receive training on dementia in most of the 50 states. And then on top of that, they don't have time to be doing stimulation skills and activities and that type of thing. That person is there to get medical assistance. So we want to make sure that you understand the difference between all of those. So those are all the care options. And one thing that we did want to say is, and Paige, you alluded to this with in-home health, but I wanted to kind of provide a bit more detail about agencies versus private professional caregivers. So I have several clients who prefer to use their neighbor's husband's caregiver. And the catch with that individual is, one, they're not insured. They're not usually trained. So in an agency, they're required to be trained. And you need to make sure that that's the case. Excuse me. And then on top of that, you have a private caregiver whose son or daughter or parent, their own parent, gets sick. Now, guess what? You don't have a caregiver because you depended on one person. An agency has a full bench of people who can step in, and that's really important to take into account.
Yeah, and there's one other thing we didn't mention about home health. I want to be very clear is the two differences. So when you hear home health, there's really two options in home health. There's one that provides therapy that's covered by Medicare, which is very short term. That's different from private care duty. So private care duty is a private pay, meaning you basically have a one-on-one like sitter service, so there is a difference between the two. We're talking about in this circumstance would be more of the private home health, meaning you've got someone one-on-one.
Okay, so Ellie asked a question about how do you prepare your loved one for respite care? What do you say to them?
Ooh, this is a good one.
This is a really good one. Thank you, Ellie. So one of the things that I say, and then Paige will hand off to you, is there's a couple things. It depends on what stage the person's at, but let's say they're at mid stage. That's usually the time when you need a break, is to say, we need to paint the inside of the house and neither one of us can be here. So I consider those compassionate stories that you're whether you paint the house or not is up to you. But what you're doing is giving them a reason to leave the house. And that is really important. You don't need to tell them, hey, I can't take care of you anymore. I need a break. So we're going to take you over to the respite care and leave you there. That's not going to work. So basically you can say, when you move to, and we'll talk about this, when you move someone to a care community, that's a totally different conversation. But for respite care, I have found that just saying, hey, we've got some work to do on the house and neither one of us can be there. I'm gonna, I've worked out a great place for you to stay. We call it an apartment. We have an apartment for you to stay at where you're going to get meals and everything. And then I'm going to go visit my sister or my brother, whoever it is that you want to use in the story. So, Paige, what are some of the ideas that you have in helping them make that transition?
Absolutely. We do a lot of respite stays, so preparing your loved one. So, Ellie, first and foremost, we schedule a home visit, or we go out and meet your loved one. Really kind of find out who they are, what's going on with their situation, and really come up with a customized story. Having the house, we've got some repairs that need to be done, is a great one. We've also had, maybe somebody's recently come out of rehab and they've been home, and the doctor has indicated that you need some additional supportive services and you need a little bit more rehab. So the doctor's ordered that you've got to come here for a few weeks. That's a good story. I've had several in Arizona, termites. Mom, your house is infested with termites. We got to have it. The termite. We've got to have the bug guy come in, and we've got to have it, and it's got to be for several weeks. So there's all sorts of different ways that we can help you, talk through that story to where you're not the bad one. Us as professionals, we want to make sure that you guys as caregivers understand we take the burden off of you, and this is not going to be your fault. It's us guiding you so you don't have the guilt too,
Right,
because that's a big piece of it.
It is. And so you're welcome. That is a very key thing. And I love the doctor example, because you can say, because inevitably you will hear, well, when do I get to go home? When do I get to go home? Well, the doctor said a couple more weeks. And it's like, oh, all right. Because the doctor is an authority figure. So it's like, well, you're not quite ready. And basically what that does is it allows them to, again, integrate well into the community. And then rather than bringing them back home and then doing it again, I'm an advocate of sooner is smarter. Once they're there, seriously consider leaving them there. It's better for both of you. It's rip the Band-Aid off, right? And you don't need to have another excuse for taking them back. Sadly, this disease doesn't get better. So if this person has worn you out already, then odds are that maybe leaving them there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, see how they do. Now, not every community is a good match initially, but go to another community. Don't bring them home, because that's disorienting. And if they say they want to go home, it's because they want familiarity, and they're not going to get familiar with a community if you're bouncing them back and forth. So something to think about. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is kind of that connection, the cheese between your care options and the dementia symptoms they're experiencing. So any thoughts on that, Paige?
The stages definitely, I think, come into play. I don't think it's necessarily that you have to have a certain diagnosis or a certain stage to understand, oh my gosh, my mom's in moderate stage. This is where I have to go with this, because everybody is so different, and everybody's care team is so different. What's going on with you at work, and do you have kids, and who's available? So it's all a little bit different. It really all just depends on, is your loved one getting the stimulation, because oftentimes when you are caring for them at home and you're trying to keep them entertained and with different activities and you're trying to come up with creative ways, and you get exhausted, but they get bored at home. They really, really do. So, I mean, yeah, I think you just knowing your person best, the different care models. But we've had people come into our communities with mild cognitive impairment, which is MCI, and they thrive in our community because they needed that routine. They needed that, consistent routine that goes on and that consistent activity and engagement program going on that they really did well. So it just depends. I mean, everybody's so different.
I agree. So, everybody, I mean, you can go at from like an example for things we don't think about is my dad, and this is in my book. My dad was saying that he could take care of mom, and I went into the kitchen. In the kitchen, she wasn't cooking anymore. So she had kind of moved into the middle of an early stage. So she was still mobile. She could still talk because she lost both of those. But she couldn't follow the plot of a movie or a TV show. She was refusing to take her medication because dad was telling her what to do. And so she was kind of on that cusp of needing somebody else in their lives. And I looked in the cupboards in the kitchen, and he had soup, frozen vegetables, which, vegetables constituted as potatoes, French fries, White Castle hamburgers,
Burgers,
and
yeah.
all the frozen food stuff, and cereal and milk. Now, she had just been recovering from colon cancer, so she needed more vegetables, salads, that kind of thing. And he just didn't eat that kind of thing. So I have had clients who have had that similar, I'm feeding her what she'll eat scenario, thinking they're doing the best care possible. And they go to a care community and they're eating a balanced nutritional meal. Someone is making sure that they're drinking the right amount of fluids, because dehydration causes the brain to demonstrate dementia symptoms. And so they make sure that, like my mom would have them lined up. She would have a 6-ounce glass of orange juice, tea, lemonade, and water. They would just make sure that she drank them all. And she would. I mean, she was fine with that. But if you don't put them in front of someone with dementia, they don't think, they can't ask. And so the caregivers need to be aware of everyone's needs. That's what a care community brings to the table. And it's beautiful food that they enjoy. It's tailored to their ability to eat and what they can eat. So finger foods for those who can't use a knife and fork. And so for mom, she had to have the macerated, so blended food.
Special utensils and the
Thank you.
pureed.
I knew you would know the answer to that. But it's those things that we as family members simply aren't sensitive to, don't want to, it's time consuming to figure out, well, what can you eat versus what can I eat? Let alone like, oh, let's just sit down and watch TV for the next 3 hours and relax. And it's like, no, that's not good for them. And, don't let them sleep until noon. Well, a caregiver in a care community is going to get them up earlier. So these are all things that, people say, oh, well, they have sundowning syndrome. Well, what time do they get up? Oh, like 10:30, 11 o'clock. Okay, there's your first problem. What do you do with them during the day? Well, I take her to the bank, and then we go do this, we run some errands, and then we have lunch or dinner, and then, we sit around and watch TV. And that's not what happens in a care community. So understanding that what you believe is the best care possible, sadly, and don't be offended, but it's probably not. So, let's take, are you good, Paige? Can we go to the next question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Next one is, what can I do to provide better care at home for my loved one? Any thoughts on that? So I'll jump in since
Yep,
you're
you go
looking
ahead
at
and jump
this.
in.
So to me, the thing that I wish I had the resources. I wish I was able to. There were no books out there really, and that's the reason I gave you the link to the Alzheimer's Association facts and figures for 2025. It talks about caregivers, the demographics, the risks, the treatments that are out there, the latest treatments. So getting educated about your situation, watching our videos, because now we have a ton of them. And then Paige has some suggestions of ways that she's involved in helping those with dementia. But, understanding your limitations and getting help. What are ways that they can get help, Paige? You have a cafe that
Yeah,
you
so I'm very involved in what they're called memory cafes. It's basically it is a dementia care support group, but you get to bring your loved one with you. Not every area has the memory cafes, but they are growing because
many do. It is
we're
across the
becoming
United
a
States.
dementia friendly country. So that's what um, so they're going to be more and more. But starting off with, even if you don't have a memory cafe in your area, a support group would be a great place to start. But the memory cafes are so amazing. If you can find one of those, it's so wonderful because oftentimes caregivers, they can't leave their loved one alone. So they can't make it to the support group because they have no one to watch their loved one. So the
Yeah.
memory cafe, you have someone you bring in, you come, bring your loved one with you. Your loved one, you have a little bit of time together, have coffee and donuts or something, refreshments. And then your loved one goes into like an entertainment. They go into a music program. And then you, as the caregiver, goes into the support group. So your loved one's being watched and cared for an hour while you go into a support group with other spouses or adult children that are just talking about the challenges that they're facing. And so you're really amongst your peers, and everyone is all in the same boat, but maybe in a different stage. So it's a really good way to get a lot of education and really network with people that you're not alone. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest aha moment for caregivers that I work with. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. I can't believe I found this group. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not alone, so that it's really rewarding to be able to give back to people, and let them know about all the resources that are out there. Because like I said, sooner is smarter. Once the diagnosis is there, I'm telling you, you have to educate yourself. If you don't, it's crisis mode and something is going to happen and then you're not prepared. And
Right.
I see it all the time. And so we're trying to prepare everybody. Just get the information, so you can really start reading up on it and educating and getting out there to look at places, interview home cares, check out support groups, because we're getting to the times where there's more and more resources out there.
So Heather asked a good question. First of all, you can Google dementia or Alzheimer's support groups in whatever town you're in, and
Mhm.
or memory cafe, or you can call look for memory care communities in whatever town you're in, and call there and say, I need to find out if you guys run a support group. So a lot of care communities run their own support groups. You don't have to be a resident. They're not there to sell you. They're there to support you. So you should have one in your town, Heather. I also think one of the things that I recommend and why I provide this service is to get one-on-one consultations. You and your situation are unique. And to have somebody listen to the situation and provide you with a path forward from that exhaustion, from that overwhelm, from just the emotional roller coaster that you're on, because that is exactly what it is. You're going up and down and up and down. So that's also important. And there's other people who do this. So at the very least, reach out. You can call the 800 number on the Alzheimer's Association website, and they'll spend time with you on the phone, asking you, what's going on, and have you tried this? And they're an excellent resource, and it's free. So, yeah, I bet it is. So Heather said,
Oh,
health is now circling the drain. And you are a perfect example, Heather, of what can happen when you wait too long
too
to get.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would highly recommend, Heather, that you start looking at places.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If
Yeah,
you're in that situation,
you're probably beyond, it's definitely that is a strong indicator that it's time.
yeah, especially if your health is suffering, because this is something that we usually tell spouses, but if your health suffers and you can no longer take care of your loved one, who's going to? Live-in care can only do so much. And they're not necessarily trained in dementia. So that's really something to take into account. And it's funny that you brought this up, Heather, because the next question is, what if I'm exhausted from caring for my person? So Paige, I think we talked about respite.
Yeah, we
But
talked about respite,
yeah,
but placement. I mean, if you're at that point, you're
mhm,
beyond respite services. Like because
right.
if you're exhausted for caring for your person, there's options, which everything we talked about earlier, but then it comes to a point where you're so exhausted that you can't do this anymore. And so then that's long-term placement. And that would be, a memory care community at that
Right.
point.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, what you just said triggered in my head is that a lot of people think they can push through. I'll just get through this month and then it'll be better. This disease does not get better. This journey as a caregiver does not get better. And by caregiver, we don't mean like someone who's you're living at home with them or you're caring for them. It means that it's someone that you care about that has this disease, this condition, and you're worried about them. There's someone that you love and that you care about. And so you're constantly thinking about them, which is exhausting.
Right.
So we need to spend more time. And Heather, I don't know if you've done this, but if the number one thing that every single person 50 or over should do is either, is to look up the ratings of the care communities in your town and go visit 3 of them. I don't care if you have
Mhm.
somebody with dementia or not. You need to go see what these communities look like, what they feel like, what's done, what's not done, so that you have exposure, so that
Right.
you don't dread this, because
Yes.
you are your own worst enemy in this situation, sadly. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
Glad you have a place. So,
yes, good, good. So now would be the time to call them up. And so here's the other thing. And Paige, you tell these stories all the time. There is an assumption by family members that when they call the place that they prefer, that they're going to have a room, that they're going to have
oh,
that apartment.
no.
And as the time goes on, as the years go on, and we have
Mhm.
more and more people who need memory care, there
Right.
aren't going to be room. So,
Right.
wait list wise, that's a thing with them. I mean, sometimes,
Oh,
right,
it
Paige?
is. Yo, absolutely. We are filling up in our communities as we speak, and we're having to really kind of play chess with moving some people around and making room for others. We in our communities we do private setting. We have private suites, large private suites, and then we have companion. So we are filling up, and so we're having to move things around, but. It's getting to the point where we are filling up and just, yeah, availability.
Right.
Really, really getting in touch with the community that you want to build a relationship with and keeping tabs on their occupancy availability.
Right. Absolutely. And letting them know. So most communities that I'm familiar with will say, we'll put you on the waiting list. When your name comes up,
Mhm.
if you're ready, and this is not about whether your person's ready, let's be honest. It's about whether you and
You're
your
ready.
brain, your mind and your heart are ready to let go. And you
Mhm.
shouldn't be waiting until your health is circling the drain, to use. I love that term,
Circling the
Heather. It's
drain.
funny. It's a great visual. Let's put it that way. Um, but they're going to say, do you want the room? And I always encourage people to say yes. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? Because most communities aren't under a contract, like a year-long contract.
Month to
It's
month.
month to month. Yeah, thanks. And so but you should commit, and this is another coaching point. 90 days is how long it takes. 60 to 90 days is about how long it takes for someone to get integrated into a community and be happier. You're going to hear a lot of, I can't believe you put me in this place, and I don't like it. And what's really funny is that you've been sent pictures of them, doing activities and dancing and having fun and everything, but they tell you
Something different.
something entirely different. So, work with communities that will take pictures and are able to communicate with you via text or on the phone. Make sure that they can do that. That's a great qualifier for looking at a community. So, okay. So next question. How can I still work and take care of my person with dementia? So Paige, you have a resource that's new that is available now that everybody should write this down, and I'll put the link in the chat so that you guys can use it.
So this is fairly new. If you ever hear GUIDE, it's the Guiding and Improved Dementia Experience. So this is a great tool to be able to, start here if you're working and you've got a little bit of home care going on, but you're still working. This is going to be some great resources. Your doctor care team, can help you with this program. There's all sorts of services for people living with dementia and their caregivers. These are all the different services that can help you. You've got the comprehensive assessment care plan. They always start with an assessment. Caregiver support, they're probably going to give you a whole list of support groups in your area. Respite services that they're going to help pay for annually. That's, a certain amount. It's not going to pay for a long stay, but they'll pay for a certain amount. I think they, when I looked at, I think it was like they pay up to $2,500 for a respite stay annually. You have coordination and support, so getting connected with community-based services, transportation, meals, and then your 24 access to care navigator help. So being able to kind of have that care access hotline to be able to, get those questions answered quickly. This is a huge thing that, and it's it's fairly new. It's only been around a year, and this is billed to Medicare. So they do bill your Medicare insurance for this. So this would be a great way to start for services and kind of getting into what options are available. If you look down here, of course, the care and respects individual background and values, and then the service customized individual needs and goals. Of course, it's through CMS, so all these services are going to be, everyone's going to be thoroughly checked. Signing up for GUIDE. You've got questions here. You have the links right here on the website. So this is a great tool to utilize, and CMS, Medicare has rolled out this program, but I love that Guiding and Improved Dementia Experience. That is what we're all striving for, is to provide a happier dementia experience. And this is a great way to find that information and to help give you support, especially for those that are still working. So Pam, anything? Do you have any thoughts on this? Do you have anybody that you know of that is using this right now?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's so new that most people don't know it.
So new.
To either promote it, in our case with professionals, or to actually even where to look. So if you don't know what GUIDE is, you don't know to search for it, right? But there was another question in the chat about, how can people afford memory care communities? Well, it depends on where you are, right? Because certain places are, $4,500 a month. Other places are $12,000 a month. So geographic location is really important. And then on top of that, the best way to find resources, in addition to calling your care communities and saying, how can we make this work? How does this work? What do you have a support group? What programs, or if any, do you have in place? And in addition to that, contact your area agency on aging. Every state has one, and they have funding to do certain activities or certain types of tasks. And there is Medicaid, but the key there is that you have to pass the Medicaid requirements. That is state funded. Excuse me. And it's the care that's available on the care communities that are on that program tend to have less offerings or services than your private communities. But some of them also like you pay for 2 years and then you can move over to whatever the Medicaid program is for the state. Is that right, Paige?
Right. And each state is a little bit different depending on what their Medicaid program is. With our Koelsch communities, we only have 2 communities but they have to be able to pay privately for at least 3 years. But all the other communities are mainly private pay. But for the most of the ones in Arizona, there is a private pay, a few-year private pay requirement, and then they can roll in the Arizona program. It's called Altex. It's different. It's called the Arizona Long-Term Care. But like I said, each state's a little bit different, but it usually is always, most people are going to have to usually come in initially as some sort of private pay, unless you've exhausted everything. Usually people have to liquidate their house, liquidate all their assets, so they have that liquid funds to be able to pay for care. And then when they exhaust it, then they can go on to that program. But there's also VA pension. There's VA aid and pension assistance. So for those veterans out there and surviving veteran spouses, there's services out there to help pay for assisted living. Once they go to either assisted living or a memory care community, those are also options that can help supplement.
Yeah. So Patty asked a question, doesn't Medicaid go after their assets? So you need to hook up with an estate attorney, because that is not true necessarily. If you do it on your own, absolutely, you're going to be poorer than dirt before you qualify. However, if you work with an estate attorney or any type of, you can ask attorneys about this, but what they do is they create what we call a Medicaid annuity. And what that does is it protects the surviving spouse, or it protects the assets. And then what you really need is to be in the situation where you have to qualify, just like what Paige mentioned about assessments. You have to qualify for the person, your loved one has to qualify for actual care. And so there are ways where you can still protect the assets. If you have a spousal situation, they will not go after your house, and they will not go after your only car. Those are the 2 things that are protected. So do your research. Don't assume that you have to be, only have $20,000 worth of assets. That is not true anymore. There's a lot of programs and a lot of services out there to help you get the financing that you need.
Yeah. And 2, if there's a couple, if you've got mom and dad, they can do a division of assets. So they can look at the whole financial portfolio, draw it down the middle with attorneys, of course. And then, if dad needs care, then it's not draining mom's care option over here for when she needs it, if she needs it. So there's all sorts of different, programs and things that asset preservation attorneys, elder care attorneys can help you with.
Absolutely. Great point. And then also, this is all state oriented. So, go do a search for your state, and you're going to have that information. And so let's get to our last question.
Yes, I love this one.
It can be really hard.
This is the question that everybody asks.
It's true. That's why we saved it for last. How do
Yes.
I tell my person with dementia that I can't take care of them anymore? You go first, Paige.
I love this one because you know what? You are taking care of them. You are taking care of them by getting the professional services that they require and that they need. And you are stronger than you know by allowing yourself to take a back seat and to realize that you need the professionals to do that because you need to take care of yourself. Because, like Pam said earlier, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to go down first. And then what happens to your loved one? So I think it's a form of love and devotion, and you're seeking professional help. So I I think it's a success.
Yeah, and so the it comes down to wording, right? So how do you tell them? All right, first idea, don't, right?
Right.
Because there's no easy way to say I can't take care of you anymore. If your person is mid stage, or like my mom, we had to move her from one care community to another. There was no point in having a conversation about we're gonna try out a new place. I could tell her that she didn't, she had lost the capacity to react or understand or comprehend. So sometimes it's better to wait longer, but for your sake and for them to get the best care possible so that they have the best quality of life for as long as possible, you should move them sooner than later. And so, I am uncertain why people actually keep a loved one who could benefit from being in a good community that provides stimulation and nutrition and engagement and care, why they keep them at home, except for the money factor, right? Because I get that it's expensive. We went through a boatload of money during the time when my parents had moved out of their condo and moved into assisted living and memory care. So I get it. But if it's time to move them to a care community, the first words I start with is, I love you, but I want the best care possible for you, and I just don't have the skills. I want, can you help me? Because asking them to help you is the most wonderful thing you can do with a parent. They want to help you feel better. That's never going to change. That doesn't change. That never changes in the evolution of this disease. So if you said, will you help me with how to make sure that you're well taken care of? And so here's some ideas. Let's try, the doctor says that you need a break from the house. And so we're gonna go to a new apartment and you're gonna stay there and you can move them at lunchtime or at a meal time and either have the meal with them, which is what I did with my mom. And then I gave her a kiss and I said, I have to go take the puppies out to go potty. I will see you later. Notice I didn't say tomorrow. I didn't say any time frames because they don't have any time perspective. So instead you say, I will see you later. And then the caregiver swept in and took mom to go look at the gardens and got her engaged with other people, and that was it. And so I was lucky. But starting with I love you and will you help me help you? And
Right.
that touches their heart. If you just say we need to move, you're going to get pushback,
Oh,
especially if they have behaviors and are resistant to change, which I think we all are. So
yeah. There's always going to be resistance to change for sure.
yeah,
Always.
and it's
But
hard on them, it's
yeah.
hard on them, and they don't want to go someplace unfamiliar. They just figured out the place they're in, and so it makes sense.
But
So that
it takes a village, and the care communities, once you find that right community that you've made a connection with, they, that they're gonna take their whole team to make sure that this is gonna be a success. But
yeah.
there's gonna be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of guilt. There's going to be a lot of, possibly anxiety from the spouse or the adult caregiver, but we're going to walk you through those things and things to expect. So it will be, better as time goes on.
Yep.
Because oftentimes the families have a worse time than the one that's being placed.
I would say 100% of the time it's the family and if it's not the family caregiver, the caregiver that's going to have the biggest issues or struggles. And we did a video on dementia do's and don'ts a couple months ago. If any of you weren't part of that, let me know. Reply back to any of the emails I've sent you and let me know, and I will send you, and it's also on the YouTube channel that the link goes to, that you'll get for every recording. But in there, we talk about the do's and don'ts. How do you handle these situations? So we've got the do's and don'ts, and then the top 7 dilemmas, dementia care dilemmas. So we've got a series here that could be extremely helpful to you if you're new to the group and watching this. So be sure to check those out.
And we do these monthly. So we just want to thank you again for joining us today. And you know what? Hey, you're all caregivers, and I call you heroes. So that's what you are. So thanks for joining and getting some information and utilize us as a resource. We're here to help.
And I'm going to put in my email address. So feel free to email me. You can go to alzheimersfamilyconsulting.com in order to see the blogs and the other videos if you would like. But it's all under the Learning Center. And so there's lots of resources out there. You are not alone. And if you have any questions, Paige is able to, she's got lots of contacts in different places. She can reach out to anybody and be able to get answers for you or connect you with them. I can do the same. I do this every day, working one-on-one with dementia caregivers. So if you have questions, don't sit there and twiddle your thumbs and lament about not having resources. Just ask us and we can help you. Okay?
We can help.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Bye-bye.